Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Aligned and Unstoppable podcast. I am here with a special guest, Betsy Pake. And Betsy is not just a neuro-linguistic programming specialist, she's also a hypnotherapist. And so I had a really cool encounter meeting Betsy for the first time. There was somebody who found me on Instagram. She tagged both of us. And I'm like, oh, let's see who this Betsy person is. And like, oh, I love what she is doing. She's got a podcast. She teaches people about shifting their beliefs and their mindset from their unconscious thoughts to conscious thoughts, and of course, manifesting wonderful things in your reality. And I just thought, wow, what a special person. And so we're here today to record for my podcast and probably for hers as well. Betsy, what's the name of your podcast?
It's called The Art of Living Big.
The Art of Living Big. How perfect.
It's kind of a fun name, right?
So good. And I love that as like an idea, like, oh, yes, it is an art, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And it's really, I think living big, sometimes people will say to me, what does that mean? And I'm like, that's the beauty of it. It's whatever it is to you. You know, success isn't just one thing to one person. So living big, I think, is just like living in alignment, right? Living your best life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know I probably skated by some important details of your bio because I'm just excited to have you here. I would love for you to bring the listeners sort of up to speed, sort of how you got into being where you are, creating this podcast, creating your business, and doing what you do.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to be here with you.
Thanks.
So I have your Oracle cards, which is what was tagged.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I had told someone about them. So anyway, it's kind of a fun little full circle thing.
Love that.
Good. So I am a subconscious change expert. So I'm trained as a trainer in NLP and hypnotherapy, as you were talking about, but also on some energy side, you know, I do some EFT. I also do some emotion code. So I like the combination of the spirit and the science. And I think that this, as for probably a lot of people that are listening, like it builds, you know, things happen in your life and then you're like, it leads you to one thing, leads you to the next thing and the next. And really it became like this merge of what I think about spirit. And we could talk a little bit about that and how that kind of came in. And what I think about science and how that plays into how we actually create our own reality. Yes. So I can tell you my little story.
I would love for you to.
So I live in Atlanta, but when I grew up, I actually grew up in Vermont, and I grew up in the 70s. So, you know, I had kind of like a really nice little childhood. I had an older sister. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She did all the things, you know, with my sister and I, all the things with our friends. My dad worked at the university. It was all very nice, you know? And then when I was a junior in high school, my mom and my sister decided to go to a hockey game for the university. And it was March and they were going to be going to a different state. And I remember that night before, I was a junior in high school. So I remember I was super mad because they were getting to go on this trip and I had to stay because I had to go to school the next morning. Mm-hmm. And in the morning when I woke up, they were already gone.
Wow.
Well, when they were on their way, my mom got off on a wrong exit and she stopped at a little store to kind of find out what to do. And they told her there's this little road that'll take you back to where you need to get. And so she and my sister got on this little windy road, and it was March, it was New York, it was icy, and my mom skidded off the road. And, you know, if you can imagine like skidding off the road and then kind of going down an embankment, and they picked up some speed into this huge open field that had one tree. And so my mom focused on the tree, as any of us would, went right for the tree. Wow. And they hit the tree. My sister actually got out of the car and crawled up to the road and like flagged somebody down. And they came with the jaws of life and ripped the top of the car off. And they medevaced her to the hospital. And she had a couple surgeries, and like 14 hours later, she died. So here I was, like 16, my whole life like shattered. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that field. Like, why did she go for that tree? And, you know, as an adult now, I'm about to turn 50, I realized that where we are focused, what we're looking at, it's a matter of life or death, and not just our physical life, but our lives with our work. Are you focused on how you hate your boss or your coworkers, or you can never get ahead, or how you want to start this business, but you never can, or your husband stinks, or your kids never listen? Like, where are you focused? Like, are you looking at the tree, or are you looking at this huge field of opportunity? And so as I've gotten older, I just have become obsessed with showing people the field. Like, look at the opportunities, and they are there. But we have, if we go now to the sciencey side, we've trained our brains to really focus in on one thing. It's the thing that's like not really serving us. It's the thing that seems important because it's danger, or it's upsetting us, or highly emotional, and it throws us all off whack.
Yeah.
So I think when we can kind of bring it back, we have a whole bunch of opportunities we didn't see before.
Yes. And thank you for sharing that story. It brings chills in my body. And also when you say it's a matter of life or death, it makes me feel like we do need to take responsibility for our life and what we choose to focus on. And even when you said what we focus on, it grows, right? So I know last year when the pandemic started and like we were, oh my gosh, everyone was freaking out. Childcare stopped. And I remember like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And my focus was really like, okay, you can do this, you can survive. But like my unconscious mind was like, what the hell is happening right now? Like, this sucks. And I took more of that into my parenting and into my marriage. And the next thing I was focusing on is like, oh, my marriage really sucks. Like, he's not doing what he needs to do, and I have to do this. Like, it was only getting worse. And this is a little personal. I haven't really shared a lot with my listeners, my closest friends know, but my marriage was in crisis by the end of last year. And it was only when I just said, you know what, enough is enough. I can't do this anymore. And everything changed like a light switch. And I saw some of my friends. We went to Sedona. I led a retreat in November, and we just got together in Austin, Texas a couple weeks ago. And they were like everything has changed for you. I can see it. I can feel it. Like, I can't even, like, how is this happening? I'm like, I don't know. We had a miracle. But I think back to your point of that focus had dramatically shifted from, look at how terrible this is. And my brain is seeking evidence of the terribleness, to like, I'm not going to focus on that at all. I'm just going to like be here. And when I was here, things started to shift and miracles started to happen. And it's so ironic because I think back, I teach my clients, my students, my friends talk about detachment all the time, of like letting go of your expectations, especially, selling your products or services, in a launch. Like, you just got like play, go outside, don't think about like the stress of it all. And I do believe this is another topic I think we could dive into, but the conditioning that we have around how stressful launching is as entrepreneurs. Everyone around us is freaking out when they're launching, and then we see how stressed out they are. So we automatically know that we're going to go into that stress mode leading up to it, during and after.
And talking about it, everybody's talking about it. So it brings it into our awareness over and over.
Yeah. How did you do? Well, shit. Now I don't know if I'm going to do that good. They did really well. Or that person did really terribly, right? Like, there is all of that. And so I have a friend who's actually launching right now. And I was talking about, it's such an interesting habit to look at, of that stress mode when we go into launch. And I've had the pleasure of having some amazing launches because I focused on receiving healing work every day, going outside and playing, getting out in nature, going out with girlfriends. Like, instead of staring at my computer and like refreshing my email inbox, like, it just totally shifting what my focus is on and actually enjoying it. And the results kind of speak for themselves.
I know recently I had a launch and it was the same kind of thing. I actually told the people in my membership, like, we're going to pull the perfect people in, that we were a collective and pulling this in. And so the week felt really fun because we were on like a scavenger hunt, like finding the right energy of the right people to come in and join us. And I think you're right. When you can shift something like that everyone talks about is so stressful and so overwhelming. And for me, I picked out the things I thought would be really fun to share.
Yeah.
And that's all I did. That's all I did the whole week. Everything else I did was like, I took a bath, I scheduled a massage, like I did all that other stuff so that the whole week felt like pleasant and fun. And I think that's like a perfect example of focus, like deciding how do I want to feel in this experience? And then what do I do that makes me feel that way? And then schedule that stuff in.
Right. It seems so basic and simple.
Right? Yeah.
But like when you're in it, you're like, no, there is no getting out. Now that I'm in, I can't turn back now. Like, well, I mean, you could. I mean, and also, so I was listening to something this morning talking about the trauma response and how it affects our body and our genetics, and also realizing that you can shift those things when you heal your body. And where do we store all this? We store it in our bodies, and like the trauma gets stored in your body. And I'm like, well, this is just another testament to why body work is so important to get regularly to push it out of your system. I mean, energy healing is one part of what I encourage people to do with me. And I call, people who join my higher level coaching programs, I'm like, this is your new normal. This is the way that we have to function if you are opening up to that next level, because opening up to that next level means that you're literally doing things differently every day. You're thinking differently, you're processing differently, you're addressing things that have been buried under the rug for a few decades to heal it so that you can move forward. And it requires a deeper level of attention. So we can't get by with just like abusing our body with food and relationships and things that just don't serve us.
Which is doesn't work. With the pandemic, like you were talking about, that whole, I know for me too, like it was stressful. It was unprecedented, right? Yeah. I know for me, I would be like, oh, it's 2:00. Let's have a cocktail. And that was not the way I had been, So I was like, why am I doing this? So I do think like anytime, whether it's a belief, whether it's your business, whether it's your relationship, any of that, when you almost can step outside yourself and notice your behaviors and go, wait, what am I really doing? What am I thinking about this? Like, how am I really acting?
Right.
And I think whether it's a launch or whether it's a, Corona Tuesday, like you can shift it just by having that heightened level of awareness.
Right. And so you're a specialist when it comes to shifting beliefs. So for a lot of us, we're like, well, it's not a belief. This is literally my life. This is a fact. And this is reality, Emily. My husband used to say things like that. It's just reality. I'm like, it's your reality, not mine.
Right,
sorry, bud. like the reality of you have like worrying about where money's coming in. And that was very much my husband's mindset. I'm worried, like someone's got to worry about, like, since when did worrying about money ever make us more money? It's never been helpful, because if that were true, everyone who ever worried about money would have plenty of money around, right? Like logically.
Right. Yes.
So like, I'm not going to worry about money because it's not working the way you think it does. I'm going to just open up to miracles and abundance and new possibilities and money to come into me in miraculous and unexpected ways. And when I adopted that mindset, that's exactly what my reality became. And he started to watch that and go, well, shit, like maybe that's working.
There's something to this. Yeah.
So can you talk about shifting beliefs? So a belief, first of all, let's back up. I kind of got carried away. So like, what's a belief? How do people know if it's a belief or it's a fact or reality or?
Yeah. So, this is the most fun conversation ever because Our reality is just created by our beliefs. It's just created by the words we use. It's just created by the things we're thinking. You know, there is an effect, even in science, there's an observer effect, right? When we're actually
Yes.
observing something, it changes. So I think that when you say, and if one of your listeners right now is like, I want to think like Emily thinks, right? I want to think like that, but this is my reality.
Mm.
If you feel like that, I totally get it. And forgive yourself, allow yourself some grace, because this might be a totally new concept or new idea to you. And just be open to like a new idea.
Mm.
So, what happens in our unconscious mind? I always think of it like a voting system. So you have all these experiences your whole life, and most of the time from like 0 to 7. You've probably heard that before. Like
Yes.
0 to 7, you're really formed. And this voting system is created in your unconscious mind. So we have our conscious mind and our unconscious mind. The conscious mind is like maybe 5% of what you're doing. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Unconscious mind, 95%. The unconscious is the stuff you don't even realize is happening. It's the thing that's like causing micro expressions on your face or causing you to react, right? Or be triggered by something. It's unconscious, just happening.
Mm.
Conscious mind is like what you're thinking, how, if you're judging, if you're saying Betsy's not making sense, or if you think she is, like all of those things. So what happens is we create this voting system, and our voting system is what our unconscious mind brings into our awareness. So if your unconscious mind is this vast thing, it can't show you everything.
Mm.
So it's got to like serve up things that make sense to you.
Mm.
Now, if I were to say to you, like, Anne approached the bank, like, what's the image you just got in your mind?
I see a woman walking towards a bank.
Towards the bank, right? Like in a city or whatever, walking towards the bank. So I just talked to somebody else the other day, and they lived by the water in a very like, rural area. And they imagined a woman on a boat approaching the bank. Now that's the voting system. Like when you got that image, it didn't like pixelate in your head. You didn't get a bunch of different options and you didn't choose.
No.
Like you were just served up what the meaning was.
That's
your
a great
reality.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But now, can you see how if somebody else had a totally different experience, their reality would be total, like you could have a fight over what I really meant and what's true.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a really good point to just say your reality is created by your voting system.
Yeah.
And your voting system is created in your unconscious mind. And that is created by your beliefs, your values, and your identity.
Mm.
So when we think about our conscious or our unconscious mind, or when we think about our mind in general, let's just say our mind in general, if you think of like a ladder, at the bottom rung of the ladder is consciousness. It's like your environment or your behavior. So somebody might be, I'm going to do a launch, right? So I'm going to put together the things. I'm going to put together my list. Like I'm going to make my plan, right? So they have the behavior, they get the Facebook group together. So they got the environment, conscious things. The next rung on the ladder is what we think our potential is. So this is starting to be unconscious. So now it's what do I think is really going to happen? That's impacting everything below. So it's actually impacting the environment and my behaviors because I'm changing in micro ways. If I think this is not really going to work,
right,
I'm showing up a little bit different,
right.
Like unconsciously, but I'm showing up different. So now people are reacting to me different.
Mm-hmm.
And your listeners have probably had this happen when they've told somebody the cost of something and they felt the constriction about how much they were charging.
Oh yeah.
Right. And then the customer, a potential customer, feels it too. And then the whole interaction is different.
Right.
So our potential really matters. Okay. What we think is possible.
Yeah.
And then the rung right above that is our beliefs. Now, our beliefs are just the story around it. This is getting into the unconscious. So now I've got these beliefs. These are stories. These are like launching is hard. It takes a while to ramp up. I can't be a really successful business person right off. There's a lot I have to learn. I'm probably going to have a lot of screw ups, like all of these things that we think, right? those beliefs cluster together and they form the next rung on the ladder, which is our values. Now, I hear people all the time say, I know my values are, like health is really important to me.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what'd you eat for lunch? And then not really.
When was the last time you sweat when you weren't putting on your pants?
Right, totally. I may or may not be talking about myself.
Yes.
So as I get into those values, the values are really important because now this is affecting everything on the ladder. This is like impacting if I hear something, right? I'm hearing a story, lunches are hard. It's impacting the belief or the story I'm putting together about that.
Yeah.
And then at the very, very top is my identity. So this is the I am. I am a coach. I am a healer. I am successful. I am learning, like whatever that is. And that is going to impact everything below it. Because if I think, and I really, really have the identity that I am a up and coming coach and I'm doing amazing things, everything below it's going to start to shift. So this is how come I always say to people, like, what you're thinking about yourself is unconsciously impacting how people relate to you. All the way down. It trickles all the way down.
Yeah.
So it's super powerful to really get a hold of the beliefs and your values so that you can start to create something different.
Right. Which is the hardest thing, especially for new entrepreneurs, because you're changing from the person who wasn't an entrepreneur and selling things to the person who then is. And that huge identity shift takes a little bit of adjusting for some people. And it was, for me, I can speak personally, is I realized the moment where I realized, oh, well, I want to get something I've never had. And I don't know how to get there, because what I do know is kept me really broke for a really, really long time. Yeah. Therefore, I better start changing everything that I'm doing in order to get somewhere else. So I'm just going to do something different every day, all the time. I'm just going to do something different.
Yeah.
And that belief system started to really open me up to, new opportunities, new ideas, new inspired thoughts and actions. And I started to kind of peel away what felt like peeling off layers of who I had been and letting go of those old identities every day. And like, all right, well, that served me. Thank you so much for being here today, Emily, Day, whatever you are, and peeling those parts of me off and going, all right, who do I get to be today? And I think that's where my meditation practice really assisted in opening those doors for me. So using meditation allowed me to go into that exploratory place of like, oh, in this vision of mine, I am helping millions of people and I'm viscerally feeling, sensing, and that is my identity. And so maybe when I wake up with my eyes, it's like, well, that's definitely not my physical reality. So I'm not getting much confirmation there, but like I felt it. And like, you can't tell me I didn't feel that. Like I know. And so there's that part that connects with intuition. It's like, oh no, you got this, girl. Like all of that higher guidance of like, this is happening. It's happening right now. You can't see it necessarily, but it's all happening. And those kinds of things start to shift my reality. And I feel like I kind of circled that,
and I feel like when you're talking about intuition too, that's like the potential piece. If we're talking about the brain, it's the potential. And like, if you can break the bond between like what I believe is possible and the results I'm seeing, because there's a little bit of time there where you're not seeing the results. But if you can break the bond of, well, I believe it when I see it, break that, then all of a sudden, like magical things can happen because you really do like sort of jump, I call it lifelines, right? Like you jump you jump to the next version of you.
Totally. And that's kind of where I got excited too. When you started, I think that part of me was broken. That part of me was kind of broken, where either my friend, when I first started my business, she's like, it's so cute. It's like, you don't even know what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, I'm just going for big air right now. I'm just going for it. And also that's a character flaw of mine. I'm that like leap and like, you'll figure it out versus like making the calculations before taking risk. I am kind of risk averse. So I I do think though, like I didn't have enough knowledge to know like how is this supposed to go? Is it actually possible? Can you do this? Because I bypassed that part to go to intuition, which says it's all happening, it's all possible. Here's all the solutions. You're going to sell 10 of these. I'm like, oh, okay. How's that gonna happen?
Yeah.
And I would start using intuitive messages to take one next step forward. And those next steps really are more like quantum leaps, because when I started to listen to my intuition, that first year in my business, I 10x my business, and it was like an explosion.
Mm-hmm.
And every year it's like multiple effect. And so,
and then everybody's like, you're lucky.
Right.
Like, no.
Like, there's nothing lucky about this. This is taking a lot of work. Let me tell you right now. But I think it's really interesting to see the science behind how this part works. And
I think the meditations, like when you're talking about the meditations that you have, so powerful for people, because it gives them an opportunity to disconnect from that circuit that I was talking about, from that ladder. It gets you out of that and into like the unknown, which is where the magic is.
Exactly. And that's also why, so I also didn't know like who I served for a while until I finally was like, oh, all of my clients, when I look around me, they're all entrepreneurs. Like, duh, why didn't I think of this? But I realized I serve entrepreneurs in that exact way, is that, so I have a membership called Mastery and Ascension, and the monthly deliverable on the first of the month is a channeled meditation and energy healing. So I've been doing energy healing for the last 20 years, energy, combined with meditation. So they're not only getting that visual to kind of unplug from all those fears, but they're also doing some really deep healing to let go of those parts that have been stopping them, and so then powerful, and then plug in. So, you know, I know you talked about how your work, you feel really deeply connected with your mom, even though she's passed, is like, you know, that part of your soul's work is working with her in this way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, I think everybody has something that's happened. Maybe it hasn't been a parent or that's died, but they've had something that's happened, you know. Everyone, I think that's like the common denominator is grief. We've all felt that. And I have come to believe, well, we talked about the spirit side of things. I have come to believe that, you know, this work is what I've come here to do on this planet, on this go around. And I think that before I was born, before my mother was born, we had a pact. And she said, I'm going to take one of these exit points. Like, we didn't know what it would be, but there would be, I believe there are many exit points if we choose to take them, whether consciously or unconsciously, or spirit pulls us. And she took the exit point, and my job was to heal from it, which was not a simple task. There was a lot of things that happen, you know, as anytime you go through something like that with your the rest of your family, how everybody deals with that. And it changes the dynamic of everything. It absolutely impacted the course of my life and the decisions that I made. So I had to go through a bunch of crap and heal from that, and then come to an understanding, and then do my part. And I have felt, you know, now for so long that she did this part and my part is what I'm doing now, so that together we're co-creating huge change and shifts in the world. And I want people to see, I know you focus on entrepreneurs, and I focus on people more in their personal side of their life, and just being able to like really tap into where they want to go, what they really want for their life, and how they want to shift and let go of the past garbage, because that's so powerful, so they can create something new. You know, with your meditations, someone asked me, how do you use NLP? And I'm like, oh my God, every day I'm doing emotion code on myself. I'm using NLP. Like, I use the tools because every day we have things that we find to release, like always a work in progress, you know?
Yeah. There's always work to do. And it's one of those parts of becoming more conscious of thoughts and patterns, and, you know, the person I'm wanting to become. And as of late, I've really been focusing on improving my parenting, because I have two really young boys, and I was noticing, especially pandemic times, like I would get really angry, like yell at them. And I'm like, I don't like that part of me. I don't need to yell at them. They're not like, it just doesn't need to happen. I don't know like what's going on there, what's happening. And I started reading this book that my friend had recommended like years ago. I finally started re-listening to it because it's like 500 hours long, audiobook. And maybe not, it's very long, but any case, all of this work about becoming a conscious parent is really about looking at my own childhood, my own upbringing, how I was raised, how I was parented, and how I'm now processing some of that through my own parenting. And I'm like, oh my God, like this has nothing to do with my kids being naughty or putting something in the wrong place or kicking each other. It has everything to do with me and the way my parents parented me. And the way they parented me is based on how their parents parented them. And this like cycle, it's like, okay, we get to break these cycles. We could like our ancestral cycle gets to be broken when we become aware of it.
Awareness. Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing. So I'm always a work in progress, and I'm not necessarily meditating for 30 minutes every day. And people sometimes are shocked by this fact, but it's just what it is. But bringing my awareness to as much of my day-to-day as I can helps me to shift my beliefs and to shift my reality. There's a meditation I have called Crystal Clear Success. And essentially you're walking yourself through a day in the life of your best day ever as your multi-million-dollar self. And we have created this supplemental PDF where you kind of make a checklist. What does the morning and the best day look like? What do you eat? What do you do? What do you physically do? How do you feel? Where are you at in your cycle? What do you do? And the midday and the evening. And if we can use it as like a checklist, you can kind of say like, are you doing it or are you not doing it? Now, like you can't wake up on your yacht today necessarily, but like, could you maybe take a drive and like look at yachts and like be in that
because the reason you want a yacht isn't because you want the yacht. It's because you think you're going to have a feeling on the yacht. Right. And then once you figure out what the feeling is, you can get the feeling other ways and bring that to you. But also what I find is as people heal whatever it is, it doesn't mean they stop desiring things, but the need to have those things goes down. So then when they get the yacht, they're like, well, I could have the yacht or not. Like all of the sudden it doesn't have the same, like they have changed.
Right.
So it shifts everything. It's so fascinating to watch because you're like, wait a second, we've been working for 6 months because I thought you wanted this thing. And then they get the opportunity for the thing, but they have changed so much. There's a contentment there.
Totally. I find that's so amazing. Fun. It's so fun. And so with the weekend, I was just mentioning the friends that I got together with, we all had this collective energy of intense gratitude. And we were all excited to be with each other. We were all individually excited with where our lives, our businesses, ourselves are. And then we brought this collective energy together. We had this explosive energy together. And that. It was so good. And it's like, we don't need to do a single thing at all ever today or tomorrow. Like just here and now is like the best.
Yes. Well, when you're with like people that are vibrating higher, it's palpable. You can feel it.
Yeah.
And this is why I think it's so important too, to like watch who you're surrounding yourself with. I always have a coach, and I always really like to have a component of it that's group coaching, because who you're surrounding yourself with is lifting your vibration or lowering. It's showing you the trees all the time, or it's showing you the open field of opportunity. So I think that, that's just so important.
So how do you help with shifting beliefs? So if there was a belief that somebody had, like, okay, I am an entrepreneur, I have this business, I want it to be really successful. And one of the first milestones that people always share is that $100,000 year. Like it seems to, I don't know who started it, but whatever, it's on everybody's minds to have $100,000 year. And while they see it, they want it, and they see what they think it means and what they think it represents. but somehow it stays out of reach. And so would you say that there is a belief there that, or like it's, I mean, an identity level, like they just don't believe that it's possible for them?
Yeah, I think there's probably a whole cluster of beliefs.
Okay.
So I love stuff like this, though. If I had that person in front of me to dive in is so
Oh,
fun.
so
But
good.
sometimes I ask people, the very first question I ask is that a problem? Because sometimes people are like, I want the $100,000 a year. I want that. I want that. I want that. I don't have it. I don't have it. And then when I say, is it a problem? The first reaction that comes up is from your unconscious, right? And then you filter it. You go,
Yeah.
oh, but that first thing, many times people go, no, it's not a problem. And the reason it's not a problem is because there's something in them that doesn't want it. It actually, there's a gain to them by staying right where they are.
Yeah.
So when they can have that awareness, like just ask yourself and feel it in your body. Is it a yes or is it a no? But is this a problem? And if they're like, no, it is a problem. I want to shift this. Like I want to grow. I want to change. Then I would start to just notice, what is the story that I think about it? Like what, every time something happens, and I use a little app on my phone. It's called Chime. It's a
Okay.
little green app. And when you search for it, you have to scroll a little bit because all these money apps will come up.
Okay.
But it's called Chime. It's very simple. And all it does is it sets out a little chime at intervals that you can set. And I will have my clients do it every 15 minutes. And it's
Okay.
so subtle that nobody around you would almost wouldn't even notice it. So this little chime goes off and then you go, what have I been thinking? What's the story? Because we're telling ourselves stories all the time. What's the story that's been happening? Where am I lingering? Something that I see come up a lot for people, and I think this happens a lot when it's business related, is
Mhm.
that there is a little bit of a victim-y part that comes up. Like, well, I can't because, like, well, right now my kids are little, so I can't. Or, which a lot of these things, right? Reality, you're like, this is reality, but there are people that do have little kids and build a business.
Exactly. I
So it
love
doesn't
that.
have to be your reality.
Right. And like the question, like Byron Katie, I love her work. So it's like, is it true?
Right.
So 100% of people who have little kids cannot make money.
Yes.
Or
Exactly.
don't
Yeah.
have, like, if you don't have any neighbors or family nearby, you definitely can't get help anywhere else.
Right.
100% true. It's like
Right.
we get stuck in those loops. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
And I think that, like, there's no shame in it. If you've been doing that, there's no shame in it. Just go, I'm normal. My brain is working perfectly. That's what my brain is supposed to do. It's supposed to keep me right where I am. But now I'm choosing something different. So I'm going to allow myself to have this heightened level of awareness. I'm going to notice what stories I'm telling myself, and I'm just going to examine them and look. And when I notice them, then again, because my unconscious brain sees 2 billion bits of information a second, where my conscious brain sees 126. So the difference there is vast. So what that means is things are happening around me all the time that I'm not aware of. I recently moved. I sold my house in the suburbs and moved into the city. And I have been a longtime fan of Sarah Blakely.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes.
I love her.
I love her too.
So when we moved here, which we literally moved December 30th, so and then I left to go to California for 3 weeks for work. So I hadn't even been living where I'm living for like maybe 5 weeks.
Okay.
But the whole 5 weeks, I kept saying, we live in Atlanta and Sarah Blakely lives in Atlanta. Like I have a long time love affair with her. I used to have a photo of her on my bookcase, and I would take her down and have board meetings with her. So it's deep rooted. Okay.
I love this.
But as we're driving around with my husband, he started getting in on it too. Like, I bet she shops at that Whole Foods. You know what I mean? Like, because, Whole Foods is so expensive. I'm sure that you have to be a billionaire to get all your groceries there. But I'm like, I bet she gets all her groceries at Whole Foods. So every time we would go somewhere, that's what I would do. Now, I follow her on social media. And so I know like what kind of car she has. Do you know what I mean? Like I know these things unconsciously, like I'm not consciously looking for her.
Right.
But one day I had to return some shoes that I had bought on Amazon, and I got to bring them back to a Whole Foods, and I picked a Whole Foods. I looked down the list. I used my intuition. Which Whole Foods? Because I don't know really where any of these are. I picked like the third one down on the list. I said to my husband, drive me to the Whole Foods. So we get in the car and we're literally like always talking about them. So I'm like, there's the Spanx building. I didn't even know where the Spanx building was. We see the get there. I'm like, I'll just run in, return the shoes. I put the shoes up on the counter. Of course, nobody's at the counter at customer service. So I just turn around and Sarah Blakely standing before me, her and her husband. So of course I'm like, get it together.
Oh, I also love Jesse. Well, yeah.
Jesse, yes. And I'm in his group, his big ass coaching club.
Are you? I'm curious about that. We'll talk offline.
So fun. Yeah, I'll have to give you this. Yeah, it's so fun. So anyway, so I stopped them and we got our pictures taken. She put a bunch of stuff about me on Instagram, and like it felt it. Some people were like, Betsy, you have the best luck. You have so many magical things happen. But I'm using that piece of intuition and allowing my subconscious mind that sees everything to just guide me instead of going like intuition's fake, like I'm not going to do that. That's too like on the simplest of things. If you can use it, it's pulling from your unconscious mind that's noticing everything.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think that can just be so powerful when we start to trust ourselves, and then you want to have a launch or you want to do whatever, like trust yourself and start to use this.
And it's a muscle, because the more that you listen to it, because you could look at that list of Whole Foods stores and be like, you know, whatever, like, it's not going to be that one today. And your ego, your mind can just totally convince you, like, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. You never knew what you were talking about. You never will. And it will say the worst things to you. It's like so mean.
Right.
Versus when you're like, that's the one, like, it just happens so fast.
Yes.
And I actually used a simple intuition thing that happened the other day when I was getting my hair done. I went out the door and I grabbed like my water bottles, my bag, and this little package of hummus with tortilla chips. And I just hear in my mind, you might want to check the expiration date on that. And I'm like, that's fair point. And so I was kind of in the rush, like going out. And then I was like, I'll just take a look. And it expired like 5 days or 6 days before. And I'm like, well, there we go. Thank you very much. I tossed it in the trash. I'm like, whatever, something better will happen. Maybe I'll take myself out to lunch. There's like one of those like fresh green places that makes like cool stuff. Yeah. And I had posted when I got to the salon, she's like, I'll go mix your color. I go, I'm going to go post this. So when she came back, she asked what my post was about. And I told her it was about my expired hummus. And she's like, oh, that's so funny. She's like, oh, I have hummus here if you want it. I was like, that's so sweet of you. So as my hair processed, she gave me a bowl of fresh carrots and her own homemade hummus. And I was like, there you go.
Yes, totally. And I bet you have like a million stories like that, right? Like I could do a whole episode where I just tell all of these magical stories where I've gotten trips to Florida and met magical people.
Yes, endless. Because I believe that's the power of living in the flow of alignment.
Yes.
When you are taking direction and being pulled in those areas instead of like forcing yourself through controlling circumstances as much as possible. Yes. Because when you're opening to those miracles, they just show right up. Like I couldn't have been like, oh, when I go to get my hair done, she's going to have a hummus snack for me. Like never, I would have never considered that.
Right.
Ever.
And like a year ago, I couldn't have looked at that picture of Sarah Blakely and been like, we'll probably sell our house and then have to move into this place and then be right. Like I'll have shoes to return.
Right. We'll probably run into each other. Yeah,
we get stuck on the how. And all we really need to focus is on the what and the why.
Yes.
The how isn't our business.
Yes. I always say it's insignificant. Like,
yes.
It's just insignificant. It will get worked out. You don't need to know. Yeah.
Yes. I love this. And I love, because you're so much on the spirit side, right? Like the intuition and the allowing and guiding and flow and all of that. And I love that. And I love that side where it's like, you can match it up with science, you know, and so this is your unconscious mind runs everything, like use it. And so if people are struggling where they're like, Emily talks about intuition and I want to believe her, but I'm kind of like, I don't know how. match that up with unconscious. If it sees 2 million bits of information a second, like allow it to help you. And it's giving you a nudge for a reason.
Yes.
Because it knows. And it's like, I'm trying to do what you want.
Exactly.
You keep doing other stuff.
And honestly, the only thing that shifted me to start using my intuition as my primary force, or as close to primary as I possibly can, is because life really wasn't working out so great. So it's like, what's the alternative? You stay here?
Might as well. Yeah.
What are you going to lose, lady? Like, just go for it. Big air. Let's go for it.
Totally.
And the first time I really started to trust my intuition, fear definitely jumped in. And I had that like debility, like anxiety feeling, that fear feeling. And it was about putting an offer out there. I was going to teach group meditation for the first time ever. And my intuition said, post it on your social media accounts, do it live tonight at 8 p.m. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then I went for a walk outside because I was kind of having a mini panic attack. And I was walking my dog in the backyard, just breathing. I'm all right. I'm cool. We're cool. Everything's cool. And then everything in my mind was like, absolutely hell no, do not, don't ever do it. Who do you think you are? Don't ever. And I'm like, totally. I'm just going to go inside real quick and delete all of my social posts like it never happened. But as I was walking back inside, I saw a little ladybug on my banister. And for me, those little things that happen mean everything. So that little ladybug, actually, when I see ladybugs, they remind me of my friend Melissa, who passed when I was 19. And for me, it was like everything in me was like, no, stay on track. You will be fine. Everything as planned. And I just stayed and I just kept doing it. And so I use the power of my environment to give me messages as well. Like all week when I take my dog for a walk, I've been hearing woodpeckers, like not just here, but like everywhere along my 1 mile loop, woodpeckers. And if you look up the spirit medicine or animal totem for woodpecker, it's all about change and being flexible and all these new ideas coming through in projects. I'm like, this is literally my season right now. It's so 100% true. So
cool.
It's so cool. So it's like, this is the stuff that I like totally geek out about. And I love that you talk about the science of it. Cause for me, reading books that are more like Joe Dispenza, like getting like the sciencey geek and like, yes, it makes sense.
Yes.
Oh, it's so satisfying.
Totally. Have you ever read The Conscious Universe by Dean Radin?
No.
He does experiments to explain like psychic phenomenon. And it's fascinating.
Okay. Well,
I love all this stuff because when you have a belief, you're like, I know this is true. Like, I just know deep down, like I have discussions with my mom. I'll pull up a bench and I'll be like, sit down, help me plan this out. I'll roll my big whiteboard out. Do you know what I mean? Like we'll have a meeting. And I know people would be like, that is nuts. Like you're nuts. But when you can find the science, it sort of like validates what you've always known. It just helps you settle in. And I think it helps for some people, really helps them trust that if that's not something that comes naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I call that team other side. They're not necessarily visible in our physical eyes, but they're with us. And, I think even as you just mentioned your mom, it's like, you can feel that energy come in, and it's as easy as calling in our guides, angels, our loved ones, our ancestors, our inner medicine woman, our inner planner, our brilliant person who's already done the thing and knows every step. We call them in.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so it's not just me. Okay, great. Everyone's here. We've got the support. Now let's do something really interesting. So I'm geeking out. I love this conversation, Betsy. Thank you. And so for those of you who are having a lot of fun along with us, and you want to learn about shifting your beliefs as well, you can visit Betsy's website, betsypake.com/beliefs. And you have an opt-in for teaching people how to shift their beliefs, right?
Yeah. And it's a fun little listen. And people always have some really, really great, like magical things that happen when they listen. So
yes, love that. So, and then you can follow Betsy's podcast as well. The Art of Thinking Big.
The Art of Living Big.
I like
thinking too. Maybe that'll be a next book.
Oh.
And then also because we had the idea that maybe we'd put this on both our shows. So if my listeners are listening, what can they get from you? They would go to what? EmilyAarons.com
Yep.
slash masterclass.
That's it. So that's my intuition mini masterclass. It's a free class to kind of wet the whistle about all the different psychic abilities and how you can unlock yours in a really easy way. I have a guided meditation, and I really believe people were all born with intuition, and it's kind of like six-pack abs, where some people they're very visible from the outside, where others like me, we just have to work a little bit harder for you to see any definition.
Yeah.
But I believe we all have it. So it's a matter of learning how to use that muscle and realizing even what you just spent, that knowing, that's a part of us that we are all, it's like built in. So the masterclass, it teaches you how to start tapping into those abilities.
I love it. So cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation.
I know, me too.
So you guys, thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you take a screenshot and tag me and Betsy in your Instagram stories. We always love to hear from you. And if there was a particular area that was like an aha, of course, you can always leave a review on iTunes. Those are always so appreciated, and they help me to help more people. So thank you so much for being here and for listening. Lots of love to you. Take care.